to welcome here as NATO Secretary General. It's further proof of Finland's seamless integration into the NATO family. Since Finland became a NATO ally 18 months ago, the alliance has become stronger and Finland has become safer. Finland has highly capable military forces and cutting-edge capabilities. You are investing more than 2% of GDP in defense. I welcome that you will host a new NATO battle group to deter any aggression, and a new headquarters to lead NATO land operations in the region. All these efforts enhance our defenses along the eastern flank and in the high north. Today, we discussed further strengthening our deterrence and defense. Over the past decade, NATO has carried out the biggest reinforcement of our collective defense in a generation, with more forces and at higher readiness. We both agree that NATO must go further and faster. We need more, better equipped forces, a more robust transatlantic defense industry, increased defense production capacity, greater investment in innovation, and secure supply chains. Allies are already stepping up with plans to acquire thousands of air defense and artillery systems, many hundreds of modern aircraft, mostly fifth-generation F-35s, as well as substantial high-end capabilities. But to do more, we must spend more. To reach our capability targets, 2% clearly will not be enough. We also addressed Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, where I made my first ever visit as Secretary General just last week. NATO must and will do more to help Ukraine. Russia continues to carry out massive strikes against Ukraine's critical energy infrastructure. Ukraine could be facing its toughest winter since the full-scale invasion began. I pay tribute to the resilience and the bravery of the Ukrainian people and their armed forces. NATO allies are providing almost all military support to Ukraine. This is vital for Ukraine's stability and ability to stay in the fight. And I will be at Ramstein, together with Alex Stubb, at the table at Ukraine Defense Contact Group to press for more aid. I welcome Finland's continuous support to Ukraine. You have delivered a significant amount of support, over 2 billion euros in military aid. What Finland is doing helps save lives. And the more military support we give, the faster this war will end. President Stubb and I also discussed Russia's ongoing campaign of malign activities on Allied territory. And in that regard, I welcome the European Union's new sanctions regime targeting hybrid threats. In an unpredictable world, we stand together to defend our shared values and democratic systems. Dear Alex, thank you for your steadfast commitment to our transatlantic alliance, and I look forward to continuing to work together. Again, thanks for coming over.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mark. I'll just put forward very briefly, I think, 5 points. The first one is congratulations to you. I don't think NATO could have wished for a better Secretary General. It's very rare that you have a person at the helm of the alliance who spent 14 years as a prime minister in the alliance. It's also very rare that you have someone who knows both the EU and the alliance so well. You have our full support in promoting our security and our common values. And it's nice in many ways also for me personally, because of course you and I have known each other since 2010 in one form or another in different types of positions. So it gives us a lot of comfort that you are at the helm of the organization. Of course, historic in the sense that I'm the first head of state to visit you here at the headquarters. So good luck with everything that you do. And at the same time, I of course want to thank Jens Stoltenberg for the instrumental role that he had in helping Finland become a member of the alliance in the past few years. So good luck in stepping into his shoes, and I'm sure it's all going to work out extremely well. My second point is on the alliance's deterrence and defense. I firmly believe that we're now witnessing the creation of NATO 3.0. We are back to the original role of NATO as a deterrence and a strong military alliance with a threat coming from the East, mainly from Russia. We have a very common understanding inside the alliance about our security challenges, and I think it's extremely important now that we work on both deterrence and defense that we do it together, and that is based on solidarity and focus of the operations, the structures, and the alliance in large. My third point is about Finland's NATO integration. I could not, as president, have wished for a better integration. I take little credit for it. I give credit to those who negotiated us into the alliance, and my predecessor and government who worked a lot in integrating us into the system. And for me, it has culminated in three things, where the first one is that we will be under Norfolk together with obviously the United States and our Nordic allies. Secondly, that we will be establishing a land component in the form of MCLCC, which of course is quite natural. If the alliance doubles its border with Russia, the land component needs to come from a country which has given military service to about 900,000 men and women and has reserves of 280,000 with a very strong land component. And the third element in the package is, of course, FLF, or the Forward Land Forces, which we are in the process of implementing with Sweden as a host nation. We might be a new member in the alliance, but because of the strength of our military, I would argue that we will be a security provider, not a security consumer. And of course, we've seen the alliance countries very willing to help us out and be involved in Finland's defense as well, and training. My fourth point is on Ukraine. We will continue our steadfast support for Ukraine, also in its path towards NATO membership when the time is right. And I also argue that for us, it's about two things. One, about values. Ukraine should have the right to choose, the sovereign right to choose which organization it wants to belong to. And it's also about our security. If we allow Russia's war of aggression to continue and lead to land grabs of others, we are, I think, at the helm of breaking international law to an extent that we have not seen since World War II. I also look forward to the meeting in Ramstein on Saturday, which has been called together by President Biden, and we'll have President Zelensky there as well. My final and fifth point is to say that Russia continues to be the alliance's and Finland's most direct and significant threat all around Europe and beyond. And I also want to stress that Russia is right now conducting two types of war. One is a kinetic war in Ukraine, where there seems to be no limits to what it will do in violating international law and also killing innocent human beings. And of course, the other warfare that Russia is conducting is hybrid. And I think we need to prepare mentally for an increased activity in cyber, in mis or disinformation, so information wars, and also the potential of sabotage. And I think here it's very important that we as allies first find out the facts, then after that we attribute, and after that we have a common line of communication. But all in all, Mark, it's been really nice to be here on my first visit with you as Secretary General, and I certainly look forward to us cooperating together in the years to come.
We will. Thank you.
Thank you, President Stubb. I'm afraid we only have 10 minutes for questions. We will start with the Finnish news agency.
I'm Hanna Lemuil from YLE, Finnish Broadcasting Company. When would the NATO membership for NATO for Ukraine be possible? And could Ukraine join NATO even if part of the country is occupied?
Well, clearly, we have seen in the Washington summit that there is this path towards NATO membership, which is irreversible. And I said in Kiev last week that I want to make it clear to the Russians that they do not have a vote on this, and they do not have a veto on this. No vote and no veto from Moscow. In the end, obviously, it is to the 32 of all of us to decide on exactly what the next steps will be, and obviously also take into account what is happening more generally. But I don't want to speculate at this stage. But obviously, this is an irreversible path. It has been made clear, and it's also clear for the Ukrainians that this is their future.
Same line. I mean, the first step in all of this were the security agreements, which a little bit less than 20 countries have signed, including Finland. I think we're the 7th or 8th to do that. The second step is hard security guarantees, which have to take place probably as part of peace negotiations. And then the third step will be NATO membership. When that will happen, no one really knows. But I think the message to the Kremlin and to Putin is very clear, that Ukraine has the absolute and sovereign right to take decisions on which clubs it wants to join. And it has indicated that it wants to join NATO. And it is a question of time when it will join. We just don't know when.
Thank you. We'll go to the gentleman in the 4th row.
Thank you. Jarno Hartikainen, Helsingin Sanomat. Question primarily to the Secretary General. Last weekend, the former Secretary General Stoltenberg said in a media interview that divided Germany could work as a sort of a template for peace in Ukraine. I'd like to ask, is this now a model that NATO is actively recommending to Ukraine, and how broad is the support for this model, this idea among the member states? Thank you.
I would like to take one step back, and that is that ultimately it's up to Ukraine to decide what are acceptable conditions for a negotiated solution. And also what are the conditions for engaging in talks with Russia. It's up to Ukraine, it's up to Volodymyr Zelensky to decide that. And what we need to do is to focus on what NATO can do. What NATO can do is help to strengthen Ukraine's hands by providing enough military support. That's why I'm so happy that next Saturday we will participate in the Ramstein meeting. And I think it is an excellent initiative by the American president to get us together at a leaders level in Ramstein next Saturday. And why is it so important that we do more to strengthen Ukraine's hand? Because it's the only way to a negotiated agreement. I believe it's the only way at the end of the road. And to convince Putin that he will not win on the battlefield. And that's the paradox, that to come to a negotiated agreement, we have to make sure that Ukraine is strong. And security guarantees, very good that they are there. And I'm so happy that Finland and many other allies and also other countries have come to security agreements with Ukraine. They will likely have to underpin any peace deal. I think that is also clear.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Deutsche Welle. Terry.
Hi, Terry Schultz. Nice to see you both. And to both of you, Secretary General Rutte, what to do about incursions is a big issue on your table right to start with. How important do you think it is to come up with a NATO-wide policy admitting that each country has the sovereign right to decide what to do about drone incursions or aircraft? And President Stubb, the Polish foreign minister, for example, says that NATO countries have the duty, if not the right, if not the duty, to shoot down anything that enters, any Russian drone or aircraft that enters their airspace. How does Finland feel about this? What would you do?
Well, your first question, we are, between allies, of course, consulting very closely how to react and respond. And it is a worrying development, unacceptable. Indeed, it is up to each member state to work on this, but clearly there's also a role for NATO to make sure that we are informed, that we are updated, and all of us know exactly what is happening and where it is intentional, or because there is so much going on the battlefield that it might sometimes also be not intentional, and to have exactly that information. That's what we are doing. And we'll take it from there, step by step, making sure that we defend our territory.
Well, two answers to that. The first one is to say on the use of weapons for Ukraine, we have put absolutely no limits except for two conditions. One is that it's for defense purposes, and second, that it falls within the framework of international law. And of course, I encourage all of our allies, including the United States, to allow Ukraine to fight this war without one hand behind its back. Then second answer is, were there hypothetically to be a situation whereby Finnish airspace would be encroached by a missile or something of the like, obviously the Finnish defense forces would take the ultimate decision. But I think the question is very theoretical in the sense that we haven't seen any drone activity or anything flying over to the Finnish side. Once again, I think with these kinds of things and with Russian intimidation, you have to really remain cool, calm, and collected.
Okay, we'll go to Reuters, second row.
Thank you, Andrew Gray from Reuters. A question to both of you. The Russian forces have recently reached the edge of the frontline city of Toretsk, and it feels like the direction of travel in eastern Ukraine is all in one direction. It's Russia making gradual gains, albeit at a heavy cost. Do you believe there is anything that NATO can do that it's not doing already that can reverse that trend? And if so, what?
Well, obviously, what we need to do is to make sure with all the allies and all the others involved that enough military gear is getting into Ukraine to support Ukraine in the war effort. And therefore, Ramstein, I think in total 50 countries participating next Saturday is an extremely important meeting. You're right, the situation on the battlefield remains difficult. Of course, we see on the one hand that Ukraine's army is holding on to part of the Kursk region in Russia. But at the same time, as you said, the Russians are making slow but still advances in the east. And we have to also take into account that the Russian losses are huge. They now stand at about, as far as we know, 1,000 killed and wounded each day. And that is on top of a total of 500,000 already killed or wounded. So this is coming at a considerable cost on the Russian side. And what I've seen over the years, since the end of February 2022, is that the Ukrainians show again and again that with their courage and with their creativity, they can push back the Russian forces. They've done so and they will do so in the future. But they need our continued support. That's absolutely clear. They need it now. And again, therefore, the Ramstein meeting is absolutely timely. And I'm so happy that the American president took this initiative.
Well, I have the opportunity to get military briefings on a weekly basis of the situation on the battlefield. And of course, it's a back and forth. The situation on the battlefield looks extremely complicated. But if I can give you a silver lining, when Ukraine advanced in Kursk, it did advance roughly 35 kilometers, 1,200 square kilometers in a week, 7 to 8 days. It took about 8 months for Russia to advance on the Eastern Front, roughly the same distance. And as Mark said, the word that we have is the innate capacity of Russia to use humans in this war. There seems to be no limits to what Putin can do and will do. What can we do on the part of the alliance? Well, Finland has provided 25 military packages. I was able to follow in real time in our logistics center in Tampere 2 weeks ago how the 25th package was moving. So delivery of what we have promised is extremely important. And of course, in the 6 times that I have met Zelensky in the past 7 months, each time there has been a list of requests, and we try to provide what we can as a frontline state. So we need to basically put our mouth where our money is, or our money where our mouth is, and then continue to deliver and implement what we promise.
Okay, one last question to Finnish news agency at the very back, the gentleman in the orange shirt.
Thank you. Mikko Gustafsson, the Finnish News Agency. First on deterrence and defense, Sweden announced yesterday its contribution to NATO's deterrence and defense operations next year. I wonder if we are going to hear similar announcements from Finland too.
Well, we're obviously in the process of looking at the overall package, and you have to remember that we have 3 white papers in the process right now. One is the foreign security policy one, second one is the defense policy, and the third one is on trade and development. In the defense policy one, we do go into a little bit more detail, but our military and our defense minister is in the process of looking at our overall contribution to deterrence and defense, and we'll probably have more news on this a little bit later.
Okay, thank you all. Have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.